Welcome to the Earning Freedom Podcast. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com. Really excited today because I'm introducing you to a young man who served time in federal prison. He's recently been released. He's currently in a halfway house, and I'm just so grateful to him for sharing his story. Dan, welcome to the Earning Freedom Podcast. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Hi, thank you for having me, Michael. My background, I got a 42-month sentence in federal prison for conspiracy to distribute oxycodone in Savannah, Georgia. I'm from Palm Beach County. I relocated to Savannah, Georgia to work for a pain clinic as the office manager. We were open a couple of months before the feds came in and shut us down, put everybody under an indictment. Tried to fight it from 2011 to 2014, and at the end, everybody basically took a plea. So my option was to either take a plea or go to trial and sit there next to the doctor, which the doctor ended up getting sentenced to 11 years. So I took a plea. They gave me a term of 42 months. I was sent to Coleman Low, which is a low security prison in Florida, Central Florida. I served 13 months due to the Rdap program, the residential drug addiction program. So I served 13 months on a 42-month sentence. And I'm still serving time now, but I'm doing it from the federal halfway house. I have 11 months left on my sentence. So my actual sentence will expire in September of this year.
So tell me a little bit about what you knew about federal prison before you surrendered.
Absolutely nothing. I knew what I saw on TV. You know, I was a big fan of the TV show called Oz. So that's really what I thought prison more or less was going to be, or Locked Up Abroad, different shows like that. I've always had a fascination with prison television, but when I was faced with going to prison myself, I became terrified, thinking it was going to be, you know, this place where you're going to be fighting every day, and it's just not like that in a low security prison. It's you know, the nickname Club Fed, you know, comes to mind because you really spend your days doing what you want to do, leisurely activities, not looking over your shoulder. There's no politics, meaning whites can hang out with blacks, you can hang out with Spanish. You're not being forced to stick with your own kind, so to speak. So it's not like what it would be in a medium or a penitentiary.
How were you able? Well, that's not necessarily true. Even that, I mean, I served time in prisons of every security level. Was 7 years in a USP, few years in a medium, 8 or 9 years in a low, and then the last decade in a camp. And the reality is this, Dan, and this is one of the things I like to share to our listeners, is regardless of where you're serving your time, whether it's a minimum, a low, a medium, or a high, you make choices. And those choices are going to determine your ability to adjust. I was in the pen for 7 years. I didn't have a single altercation, not a single altercation, and was able to focus on preparing myself for a life of success and meaning and relevance. And the reason why is because I refused to buy into this mentality of prison that the best way to serve time is to forget about the world outside and just focus on inside. My advice always through every message is that you've always got to be thinking about how you're going to position yourself for success. What resources are available to you? What can I do to make the best possible outcome? And if I live that message as the days turn into weeks, the weeks turn into months, the months turn into years, and for some, as the years turn into decades, you find that you can empower yourself. That's what I found. That's what I always try and share. The challenge of in a camp, people are afraid to go to a low. In a low, people think that it's only a low in a camp that has these problems. It's true, there's a higher level of volatility, but for a man like you who's determined to live as a law-abiding, contributing citizen, there's always an opportunity to move forward and prepare for success. And I'm so glad that you were able to find it, because even in a low, there are some people who fail to get that message. I'm sure you experienced in the low some guys that were still of that mentality that resulted in them getting into a problem and they got shipped back to the medium, or, you know, things of that sort. So tell us a little bit about your experiences while you were inside. What did you do to avoid the negativity and the hopelessness?
I immediately, the minute I walked in the gates, September 23rd, 2014, the minute I got there, I realized right away that I didn't ever want to come back to a place like this, even though it wasn't a violent place, so to speak, because of the low I was at. I didn't want to be in this type of predicament where I was out of control of my life, where somebody else was dictating what I was going to do, what I was going to eat, what I was going to wear, and when I'm going to do everything. So I knew RDAP, which I was told from my attorney prior to going in, the residential drug addiction program, was one way to get through a little bit quicker. And I said what I needed to say to try to get into the program, thinking the program was going to be all about drug addiction, and this is going to be a no-brainer for me because I don't have that bad of a drug addiction. I smoked pot and drank a little bit here and there, enough to get into the program, but immediately found out the program was much more than that. It was dealing with my own thinking, taking responsibility for my actions, not blaming people for my own situation. And I had a hard time with that initially because I really thought I had my whole life put together, and my best thinking landed me in prison, working at a pain clinic, trying to find ways to justify, well, I'm not the one handing the prescriptions to the patient, somebody else is doing that. So I always justified my actions by blaming somebody else or blaming my surroundings. I used RDAP, took it real serious. I had a great case manager in there. A great DTS, drug treatment specialist, Ms. Neesmith. She helped me immensely with constantly pounding me every time I tried not to take responsibility or slickly talk my way out of a situation. She was right there. She's seen a million people come through that program just like me. I took my GED while I was in there, which isn't something I ever would have done without being forced to. I took some Spanish classes. I was teaching some reentry classes or helping with reentry classes on the credit restoration side, and how to do proper resumes, how to prepare yourself to do a job interview, your posture, just positive thinking, man, just trying to keep my mind right the whole time, not letting the situation abuse me. And now I'm using this information out here in the real world, giving it back to people that are getting ready to go through the same thing. Because walking into federal prison, I've never been there before. I don't know people that have been to federal prison other than what I've seen on TV. I was lost. I didn't know who to turn to. I was terrified, and nobody had any real answers that I was looking for specifically. Yeah, I knew how much time I was doing. I knew what my custody level was, but I didn't know the risk of getting a 5K1 and acceptance of responsibility, what that really means going to different places. And, you don't walk around telling everybody in prison, hey, I got a 5K1. That's looked at in different ways from different people. So just understanding that is something I wish I would have known more about prior to going into prison.
Good, good, good. And now you've been released from prison, and you're living where now, Dan?
I'm in Spokane, Washington, Washington State.
But where are you living right now?
Oh, I'm living in the federal halfway house in Spokane, Washington.
So what level of liberty can our listeners expect if they're going into the prison system and going to emerge? Tell us a little bit about the experience of living in a halfway house.
The experience of living in a halfway house can be really stressful if you don't immediately prepare yourself to get out, find a job, spend your day at least looking for a job. Because if you don't have a job, you're really not going anywhere. And the halfway house isn't like you just leave in the morning and you got to come back at night. Everything you do is accounted for. You can't go out and hang out with your friends. You're not going to go out to lunch when you want to. Everything is dictated what you can do. So if you don't have a job, you're not going anywhere unless you're maybe putting in a pass to go to Walmart for an hour to do some quick shopping, then right back to the halfway house. They monitor everything you do. They drug test you. Every time you walk back into the facility, they breathalyze you to make sure you weren't out drinking, random drug tests. In a lot of ways, it's more strict than prison itself because you're having that out custody where you can actually be out amongst real people. So you really need to prepare yourself while you're in prison for the halfway house. It's not a walk in the park at all.
Another issue in the halfway house that I'd like you to elaborate on is the custody and security level. People who serve time in a camp or in a low, they're only around other people who also have been classified in the same way as being in a camp or in a low. Who are you surrounded with right now? What types of people are you surrounded with? Where did they serve their sentences?
The majority of the people that I'm surrounded with were high-level security at one point. A lot of these guys, 10, 15, 20 years down, so they all were at pens or at least started at pens and trickled their way down through the system, kind of like you did yourself, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of guys there that came straight from the camp, and that's all they'd ever seen. And honestly, they're the ones that probably complained the most. The guys from the pen, they they've seen other things that, you know, somebody like me I've never seen before, only hearing about their stories. So I appreciate it, and I try not to take it for granted, and try not to rub anybody the wrong way. I pretty much keep to myself, friendly with everybody, friendly enough to the point where I'm not crossing any lines. I'm not engaging in any criminal activity, not drinking, not doing drugs, because those things can go on in halfway houses. You know, people will push the limits to see what they can get away with, and it's just I make the choice to avoid those situations.
Now, in having completed the RDAP program, Dan, you also have some challenges and responsibilities. Should say. Now that you are in the halfway house, can you elaborate a little bit and tell us about what follows when you transition from federal prison to a halfway house if you've been released through RDAP?
Yeah, well, first off, if RDAP, you can receive up to 12 months reduced sentence off of your prison term. So on a 42-month sentence for myself, I received 12 months off of my 42-month sentence. So it's 12 months they took off. I have 11 months in the halfway house. So part of the halfway house transition.
On that for a second, Dan, because they didn't take it off of the sentence. They advanced your release date, which is even better. It worked more in your favor because when you walked in there on 42 months, correct me if I'm wrong, but on 42 months, you were going to get about 15% off or 13% off for good time, right? So that takes off 42 minus 8 minus about 12 months just for good time, which takes you down to 30 months. And then you got a full 12 months off of that. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, your good time comes off first, and then you get a year off.
And then you get the year off of that. So you're 12 months off of your sentence. It's off of your mandatory release date, which actually even works more in your favor. So you did better.
They deduct that 15% first, then they deduct the year from there.
Right.
Yeah. And I served 13 months. I ended up serving 13 months in federal prison off of 42 months. So it worked out really well.
Yes, but you've got some aftercare issues, and that's what I was hoping you would elaborate a little bit on.
Yeah. Yeah, the aftercare, they're in the process of changing the name, but it was called TDAT. It's like a transitional RDAP, basically. One day a week, you have an hour-and-a-half session, and for me, it's every Wednesday from 6:30 to 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. I have an hour-and-a-half session with a group of guys that all went through RDAP, where we meet with a DTS or a counselor. We just recap RDAP material, make sure we're all still on the same page, and we're programming. And then we also have an hour a week of one-on-one session with the same counselor. But part of the conditions of RDAP is I need to successfully complete a halfway house, and I need to successfully complete the transition period. If the counselor at any time thought that I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain or I wasn't programming properly, they could remove my RDAP complete status and put me as a comp fail, which would actually take away my year that was given to me from the RDAP, and I would have to give back my halfway house time. So I'd really be going back to do 2 more years if I were to screw up and start making poor decisions at this point.
Right. And what responsibility you said about programming? Tell us a little bit about what that programming entails. What actual responsibilities do you have to do?
You have to show that you're actively looking for a job, maintaining a job. They want to see that you're saving money. They want to see that you're going to NA or AA meetings or some sort of therapy meetings where you're promoting positive thinking, you're promoting making the right choice, maintaining and showing leadership qualities, that you're not going to follow other people when they make their bad decisions. RDAP is one thing when you're in prison because everything is controlled for you. But being in an environment like this now where I have choices, where I can decide to try to skip work and go to the bar and make decisions like that, or push the envelope, come in late, hoping they're not going to catch me. It's applying everything that you've learned through the 9-month RDAP program, seeing you apply it in a real world situation, making good choices is what the program was designed for. And the program doesn't change you if you're not willing to make that initiative and want to change yourself. Nobody can do it for you. So the fact that I now have the confidence that I'm not going to allow myself to make a bad choice just because of instant gratification or immediate gratification of it sounds really good right now, I could really use that extra money right this moment. I'm taking the time, I'm thinking about my decisions, I'm weighing my consequences versus the reward. And if any time, I mean, I still walk around with RDAP I was at, you wore lanyards and bracelets. This white bracelet represents phase 3, which is the phase right before you complete RDAP. I like the color of it, but I wear it because I look down and it reminds me of what I had to go through to get to where I am today. And I don't want to make those same mistakes again and fall back in on it.
So the Bureau of Prisons no longer requires individuals to go to some type of treatment where you're meeting with a counselor once a week or something?
It does. They're just changing the name. The name is in a process of being changed from TDAT to something else. But yeah, they're still requiring you to do. You're talking about your in-house programming, your after-hours care, correct?
I'm asking you to tell us about what you're experiencing with regard to some type of a formal counseling that you have to go to a meeting with a counselor of some kind. Walk us through what you do. Do you have to pay?
Go ahead. I don't have to pay for anything.
Okay.
No, every Wednesday, 6:30 to 8, I meet with the RDAP counselor, which is
every
TDAP.
Wednesday from when to when?
6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay. Now, what if you were working at those times?
You have to accommodate your schedule to fit theirs. That's mandatory. So if you decide to get a job and the job's like, hey, these are your hours, and you tell them that and they won't give it to you, you can't take that job because your treatment comes before anything else as far as RDAP's concerned.
Okay, so you attend a class from 6 to 8:30 on Wednesday evenings. Is that right?
6:30 to 8:30, yes.
And how many people are there?
Depending how many people are in your halfway house that are from RDAP. Like in our halfway house right now, in mine, there's about 6 or 7 guys.
And what are the 6 or 7? What's the dynamic of that 2 hours? Tell us what goes down.
There's a couple of guys in there that you'd never even know they went through RDAP. They got through it. Some prisons run a more strict RDAP program than other prisons. So, it kind of blows my mind that they even got through RDAP. And then there's other guys in there that take the program real serious and they remember the material. But more importantly, you can see how they're trying to apply the material into their daily life. So it's a big dynamic from people that fake their way through the program to people that are still in process of change.
And do you continue to have to go through the same types of courses that you did while you were in prison, or is it a different type of coursework in the halfway house at those counseling meetings?
It's the same and different. There's some book work you do where the books are from the same company, the Change company, so they even look the same. It's got a lot of stuff you already did. But then there's more real world application. Like we spend time talking about what we go through now in our day to day. Like what obstacles are we coming across now? How are they dealing with your kids now that you're seeing your kids hands on? You're not just having a 15-minute phone call once a week with them. Things like that.
Who's the counselor? Is it a BOP official? Is it a private practice counselor, social worker? Is it somebody who works for the halfway house? Who is it?
They don't get they don't really answer those questions. I've asked them directly, and from what I understand, he works directly for the halfway house. Probably
a contractor, would you guess? Okay. And
That's
who's running your halfway house? Is it the Bureau of Prisons, or is it Geo Group or Corrections Corporation of America? Who is it?
I don't know who runs it. It does say, I saw it on the BOP website. If you look up me on the BOP website, it tells you, because they monitor like 4 or 5 different halfway houses. I know they have certain guidelines they have to follow through the BOP, but then they have leeway to, like cell phones. Like you said, cell phones can be depending on which halfway house you're at. Some do smartphones, some don't. So they do have their own leeway on what they want to do at the halfway house.
How much liberty do they give you to see your girlfriend?
I go home every weekend. So, I go home Friday, usually at 8 p.m. and I come back to the halfway house Sunday at 8 p.m. And then my girlfriend will come to my office. She'll bring me lunch. So I see her a couple times throughout the week. So I'm seeing her pretty decent amount right now.
Is she finished with her halfway house experience?
Yeah, she was in and out of halfway house. She only got 3 months halfway house. So she was there about a month and a half, and then she went right to home confinement. She'll be finished with probation in a few months. So she only got a year of probation. So she's almost done with everything.
Well, why don't you ask her if she'd like to tell her story on the Earning Freedom podcast? Because I think there are a lot of women that would very much like to hear about her experience before they surrender. And I'll ask. Yeah, I'd love to feature her story. Another thing I'd like to ask you to do is I know that you're serving time with a lot of guys who've just been released from prison. One of the things that I'm really excited about doing with the Earning Freedom course right now is that we're able to get inside of the United States Penitentiary in Atwater. I deliver courses for men who are in there. And so if you have any connections with guys who've recently been released from a USP or a medium, please connect them to me, because I'd like to not only tell their story, but use it as a course, as a case study, so to speak, so that we can communicate with more men who are in prison who want to emerge as you have emerged successfully, with your dignity intact, with a solid work ethic and a job plan to build a career. And we'd really appreciate it if you could make those connections for us, so that we can help them tell their story. And really, more importantly, my main mission, I'll say, is to spread a message to people who are in prison, give them a sense of hope and meaning, so that they know they can come out and there's a better life waiting for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely speak with everybody there, including my girlfriend.
Great. So we've kind of come to the end of this episode. Do you have any final words that you'd like to share with the Earning Freedom podcast?
Anybody that's listening to this that's either getting ready to go to federal prison, you're not alone. There are resources out there for you. There's companies like Michael's that would be more than happy to give you the information that you need. I have a YouTube page that I post up there. If you just YouTube rdapdan, speaks about my situation and questions and answers that people have getting ready to go into prison. I got an informational website that people can go to, rdapdan.com, where you can go check out more information to find out what you can expect and photos and stuff from inside prison. And if you're in prison, the best thing you can do right now is start preparing for your future. And when you're getting out of prison, don't wait till the last minute, because once you get out, it's going to be very overwhelming, especially if you've been down for a long time. So finding out what resources are available through churches, through charity organizations, job placements, things like that are going to make your life a lot easier to transition, to get yourself in and out of the halfway house without any giant hiccups.
Well, that's really great guidance. Tell me something. Do you know Justin Paperny by any chance?
Wow, that name sounds familiar.
Well, Justin does a lot of this type of work, and I'm going to connect the two of you because you guys might be able to work together. But just want to thank you for sharing your story with the Earning Freedom podcast. I am Michael with michaelsantos.com. We will have show notes that link back to Rdap Dan's website and story. And I hope that you will continue preparing yourself for the most successful outcome of your own journey if you're venturing into the federal prison system. Thanks so much. We'll be back tomorrow with another inspiring guest.
Thank you.